You know what I was thinking? If Joe was behind the drums, he ducked backstage. Joe, can you come out here? Actually, James, there's like 2 stools right over there. And Joe, grab a mic. Just grab a mic. And I just want to get him out from behind the drum kit for a minute. How you doing this morning? Are you good? All right. Fantastic. Oh, yeah, we got right here. Well, I could use the tall one. I'd feel taller next to you. Thanks, brother. So we were Joe and I, a month ago, we were sitting in your back porch there, and we were just chatting. And so I thought this might be a good introduction to the series that we're doing. So do you remember us sitting back there talking? And,
oh, yeah.
And we were talking about grief, but we didn't recognize it as grief, or you didn't recognize it as grief when it was first happening. So you and Lori are got the boys, and they're starting to move on in life. And we were just talking, and so tell us a little bit about what you guys experienced.
Well, thank you. Thanks.
Yeah,
and,
brother.
It's interesting because we're going through, when you were giving a little intro, when things, you don't realize you're grieving, and things start coming out sideways, we like to say, like anger or frustration, depression. We, like any parents who love their kids, we poured our lives into our kids. And I wouldn't do anything different. And so I remember our oldest son, Josh, went off to college. Our younger son, Eli, graduated. And it was like, what do we do now? I mean, I remember literally leaving the field after Eli's last football game. We were so involved. We were the quarterback club presidents. We were all that. And I remember Lori and I walking to our car, and almost on cue, we both looked at each other and said, what are we going to do now? Well,
it became your identity.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Our identity was that, that's the Katinas. That's Josh and Eli's parents. Those are the quarterback club presidents. Oh, we love them at Centennial High School. So it was like, what now? And within the next several months, we put our house on the market. We put a for sale by owner out there. And I remember it was a rare Sunday when I was home. It was the fall, and I was watching football. And my wife came in from walking our dog, and she says, what is that sign doing out there?
Oh, you didn't tell your wife?
No, we talked about it. We talked about it like for 2 weeks. She was there.
Small detail. Yeah.
She was grieving, so she forgot that we were talking about it. And I was like, I think I mentioned this. Women, you all can multitask. Don't ask us men serious questions when we're watching a football game. So I was like, oh man, I was ticked. I was like, turned off the TV and went and got the sign and threw it in the garage. And I figured I'd talk her out of it again, and we'd sell it on Monday. So Monday comes, and I'm kind of trying to explain to her why we both agreed to put the house sale sign in. And after a long conversation, we realized we were literally trying to move away from our sadness. We were like, this is too sad. All our lives, for the last 15 years, we've lived here, we've poured it onto our kids, they're gone, our identity is lost. So maybe if we sell this house and go somewhere else, we won't have to be sad.
Yeah, and that's something.
Well, we're still in the house. Some days we're sad, and some days it's amazing.
Yeah, so. Yeah. And we were talking about, it's like you guys finally just looked at each other and said, we're grieving.
We're grieving.
And it's sort of like it dawned on you.
Absolutely.
That's what this was. This wasn't a financial decision. No. This wasn't a neighborhood decision. This was a loss.
And it would have been a horrible financial decision, by the way, because we were going to move into some place we could not afford.
Yeah.
But at the time, that seemed better than being sad.
Wow. And that's something.
Now we're in another season of grief. Josh, our oldest son, just got married. And so for the last month, that's good news.
Yeah.
We got married a month ago yesterday.
A month ago.
And we are legit empty nesters now. In fact, the other day, I came home and I looked at Lori. It was like 4 p.m. There was nothing else to do. I said, can we go to sleep now? So we're
Yeah.
at a new season of grief.
Yeah, yeah. Wow. Thanks, Joe.
Yeah,
Appreciate
man.
you, brother. Thank you so much. Look, the guys are going to come back, and they're going to share. They're going to share a couple more songs with us at the end. And I just today wanted to introduce this idea. And Jesus says in the Sermon on the Mount, Matthew 5:4, "Blessed are those that mourn." And it was one of those verses, to be honest with you, that I never liked. You ever read Bible verses that you love? You're like, oh, this goes on the fridge. And then you read some that you don't like, and some that I don't even understand that. Anybody? We can be honest. Might as well you're at church. So this was one of those verses that I just didn't like much because I didn't really know what to do with it. And I thought it was a little bit depressing. And it took some years, it took some time for this one to grow on me. By the way, some of the things that you pick up in life, you don't fully understand right away. Or let me say it this way. Sometimes people explain things to you that you just need to tuck away for later. People are teaching you something or sharing something with you. You know, when you're young, you just don't understand it. But don't dismiss it. Just tuck it away. Save it. Because there's going to come a time when that piece of wisdom is going to help you. And Jesus says, blessed are those that mourn. And the other thing that I realized was, not only did I need to sort of tuck it away for time, but I also realized that our culture, American culture, isn't very good at this. We just aren't good at mourning. Other cultures, because I've traveled quite a bit, I will say this, third world cultures, they are much better at this. I've even noticed, because I do a lot of funerals and I'm around this a lot, that, it used to be that, you would stay there and the body would be lowered into the ground, and then, people would throw dirt on it, and sometimes that still happens, but less and less that happens. Now they just say a prayer and everybody gets whisked away. I also noticed this, there's astroturf over the dirt. And I'm not faulting anybody I'm friends with, because I've been around the funerals for a long time. I've just noticed that our culture is trying to sanitize this whole experience. Now, by the way, stay. You say, well, but I'm a Christian. I'm a person of hope. All that doesn't matter because of the end. And I think I got to stop you just dead in your tracks there. It's not healthy to skip steps. So hope and acceptance is absolutely, it's death and resurrection, death and resurrection. That's the whole Christian pattern, death and resurrection. So we're going to get there. But I'm going to drag you for a few weeks through the ugly parts for, I believe, our own good. It's not healthy to skip steps, because if you try to skip to hope, I'm fine, everything's fine. They're in heaven. This is all good. If you try to skip steps, it's unhealthy, because the loss that you feel is painful. It's painful. If you didn't love whatever you lost, if it's a person, a relationship, a dream, if you didn't love it, it wouldn't be painful. And we don't like pain. We avoid pain. But pain, as Joe was saying, will find its way out. In healthy ways or in unhealthy ways. Everybody look, this is why I'm doing this whole thing. Pain is going to find its way out in a healthy way through grief and mourning like Jesus taught, or it's going to find its way out. Why are so many people so angry? Because anger, we would rather be angry than sad. Especially men. Rather be angry than sad. Because sad, you feel so hopeless. And I'm not trying to condemn the men here because I grew up as a male in our culture and I was taught all these things too. You don't be sad and don't show pain, especially if you grew up in Flint. You don't show pain. You don't let anybody know they got you. And it starts physically. You don't let anyone see that they hurt you. On a football field, anywhere. You don't let anybody see that. And it translates. It's very subtle, but it translates. And so the same thing is true. If we are hurting emotionally, we can't admit it. We move on. We stand up taller. Jesus goes, "Blessed are you who mourn." To be honest with you, I just didn't like that verse because it just didn't square with how it was brought up. I didn't see any blessing in it. I just saw weakness in it. I saw failure in it. And what I didn't realize, this was a key, so key, to becoming a healthy person. I'm calling this series Growing Through Grief because as we grieve, we grow. One of the problems with I think, with some of my early exposure to Christian teaching was I was taught there's like two things that you can do to grow spiritually. Maybe you were raised something like this. Go to church and read your Bible or something, or go to church and pray, or it's a very limited scope. This is what helps you grow. I don't know if you grew up like me, but after a while, you sort of hit a wall. And there's only something that can happen that can get you over that wall. I was never taught that grief, mourning, was a tool to help you grow. And yet, some of the most compassionate, loving, warm, Christ-centered, fruit of the Spirit kind of people I've ever met are people that have suffered and mourned a lot in life. I've probably said this more than my fair share of times, but that's why we take people on these outreach trips, not just so that we can reach out to the poor people in the world, but so that our own hearts get affected by, wait a minute, these people are this poor and this happy and this loving, that somehow they learned what Jesus taught. Blessed are those that mourn. Our culture, like Joe and I were saying, we just don't know how to just sit there and be in pain. Because we always have 3 steps to fix something. Here's 3 steps to fix this. Here's 3 steps to fix that. But when you lose somebody that you love, there's no 3 quick steps. We live in I call it a hyper-rational culture. We have to rationalize everything. This happened, and this is why it happened. But some things in life, listen carefully, they don't make any sense. They don't make any sense. And because you were bathed in a rational culture, it's almost like we don't even see it because we're swimming in it all the time. We try to make sense out of everything. We try to control everything instead of just sitting there and letting the pain teach us something. Because loss and pain always teach us something. Tears are like washer fluid that cleanse our eyes. A few weeks ago now, my grandma got shifted to, I think I mentioned it the day after. I couldn't help but not mention it. My grandma got shifted to an assisted living type facility, and my aunt told me that this was going to be her new home. This was going to be her last stop. And she's 96, 98. Goodness, she's 98, sorry. She's 98. And it's as if, in my head, I thought she was going to live forever. I couldn't accept it. You know, she told me, and I knew it was right, but I couldn't accept it. And I hadn't in a long time, I sat in the parking lot after I went to visit her. I went the day they moved her, and I just cried like I hadn't cried in a long time. And tears, I want you to know this. They cleanse your spiritual eyesight. And we need it badly. Let me tell you this. They're probably right now. These are always dirty. And every time we get to church, my wife always leans over and goes, honey, let me just clean your glasses. Why can't you clean your glasses? They're so... And this is the truth. If you wear glasses, you would understand my plight as well. They don't just... You know, it's not like a mud puddle hits you and then they're all dirty. It's just you go through life and they get a little bit dirty and you don't recognize when they're dirty. And I should be like every morning, I know, but that's not me. So after a while, she just goes, but this is what happens to our spiritual eyesight. Over time, we lose our compassion. Over time, we lose our sensitivity to people. We lose this ability to connect. And our eyesight gets muddy. That's why people can say the worst, most harsh things. It's just because they aren't seeing well. And they need to have them cleansed. Of course, like a lot of people, I was reflecting this week about 9/11. I went to New York City on right before the 1-year anniversary of 9/11. It was so raw still, so fresh still. And I went to talk to different folks there. We made a little video, and I ended up in this firehouse talking to this guy who's a fireman. He told the most unbelievable stories about loss. The whole system, everybody's system was on absolute overload. No one in the firehouse could talk a year later, except this one guy. I mean, talk about it to me. I got in there and they kind of pointed to this one guy. He kind of became their spokesman. They were crossed, and as they had to leave, they realized there were bodies in the street. And they had to make a decision to rush to try to save the people. They had to drive over the bodies. You pause. Can you imagine? Can you just feel your insides just coming apart? He looks over at his chief. What do I do? And he's, go. You don't recover from that stuff quickly. A year later, I think they were all still in shock. Skipping grief. By the way, I don't know if you followed any of the things that are happening this week. Stories are coming out left and right. They're doing all these stories 20 years later because people are finally able to talk about it. The idea that you can skip steps here, I'll just jump to hope. A lot of well-meaning Christians and a lot of well-meaning pastors, and I do believe well-meaning, just try to jam in a little bit of hope. And you always want it. You always want hope. When I try to do funerals, I try to give people some balance. You need to grieve, and you need to grieve with hope. You have to hold on to both. But if you just jump to hope, that's not really hope. It's hype. It's like a bad substitute food. It's not the real thing. We learned a lot about eating bad foods, made-up foods for our diets these days, haven't we? Who here grew up on SpaghettiOs like me? And we learn, like, man, maybe we should have a little more food in our food. And this is what happens, but we've done the same thing spiritually. Here, this is quicker, process it, it's quicker, right? It's cheaper. So jumping to hope, just skipping all of these steps and just jumping to everything's great is cheaper, it's quicker, and it's easier, but it's costly because pain always finds its way out somewhere. See? Can I just tell you, it's okay to be sad sometimes. That's a part of it too. I did a funeral right here yesterday. Precious brother to Kim, part of our family. And we were talking about this story in John 11. Jesus loses his friend Lazarus. And I emphasize this fact because I think sometimes when people think of Jesus, they go, yeah, he was human, but they kind of really think of him as a little bit aloof and a little bit kind of above it all. And he wasn't really affected by the day-to-day things that affected you and me. But that might miss the point entirely. That Jesus had friends. You know, he had the 12 disciples. We talk about them. We know about them all the time. But we don't think about the fact that he had friends. And probably he was friends with these 12, but, you know, maybe, I don't know, maybe some of them had more of a business relation. I don't know. But he had a friend who wasn't in the 12. His name was Lazarus. And they were friends. And they must have done what friends do. Talk about stuff. I mean, what do you think about what your friends are? That's just the guy or the gal you just talk about stuff with. You talk about fun stuff, you talk about funny stuff, you talk about serious stuff, you just talk about stuff. Maybe that was the guy that Jesus talked about his frustration with the disciples too. You know, maybe that was the guy they stayed up late at night and just talked. And when you do that with somebody, your heart starts to get knitted to theirs. That's why it's painful to lose someone, because when they're gone, it feels like your heart's ripping. And if you're honest, look here. That's why it just doesn't hold water. People that don't believe in God or spirituality, it just doesn't hold water. Because you can't explain these things. Why, if we're just flesh, if we're not spirit, and who cares? They die. But you feel physically tearing in your heart. Anybody ever felt that before? The inside feels like it's tearing. And it says there, Jesus wept. I don't think it was it's a very short verse in the Bible. It's 2 words. But I don't think it was a cursory, obligatory. I think it was one of those moments where he fell to the ground and no one knew what to do. Maybe they all stepped away. You ever see the strong man break down? You know, the strongest one in the group? I mean, he was always the one they looked to, Jesus. We'll look to him. But when he's broken and weeping, heaving, why? Because he loved Lazarus. And here's the kicker. You got to think he knew he was going to resurrect him. But it didn't stop him from genuine weeping. He didn't skip the steps. I have a theory. I don't need proof, but I think people are always talking to me about what's going on in our culture, what's going on in our world. I have a theory. We don't mourn very well in our culture. So we use anger. I think we're stuck a little bit. Because what's the reality? Huh? can't fix this stuff. We're used to just fixing everything. I'll fix it. You can't fix that. You can't fix it. Now, we're going to get to hope. Don't worry. Don't worry. God is good. It ends good. We're going to get there. But allow yourself some time. And if this isn't what you're going through and this isn't your season of life, just pack this one away, because I guarantee you, you're going to need it someday. And it's not just about losing a loved one, although it is very much about that. It's understanding we grieve through all kinds of loss. Some people lose a relationship. Some people lose the kind of relationship that we used to have, and everywhere in between. The guys are going to come, and we're going to sing. They're going to sing. I want to read from Job, because Job had everything going. It was firing on all cylinders, man. Job had been to the Stephen Covey seminars. The charts were up and to the right, man. Until it all came crashing down. And it says at the end of chapter 2, then they sat on the ground for 7 days and 7 nights, and no one said anything. Shock. Silence. And Job moves from step 1 to step 2. And by the way, don't worry about the steps. Don't think, I should be on this step. That's not the point of them. We'll talk about that in the weeks ahead. It's not about trying to, I should be on step 8 by Thursday. It's not how grief works. It's messy. You go up 2 steps, you fall back 3, you climb 1. It's not a competition. It's to just help you open your eyes that this is real. And if you start to feel these feelings, you realize, I'm normal. I'm okay. And I'm on my way. I'm normal. I'm okay. And I'm on my way. And Job cursed the day that he was born. May the day of my birth perish. That day may it turn to darkness. May God above not care about it. He goes on in the whole chapter and says, curse the day I was born. I shouldn't even be alive. That's a part of the feeling. You will feel that way at times. Don't skip the steps. It's okay. Blessed are you who mourn, for you will be comforted. And not only will you be comforted, look at this, you will be changed. You will be changed. You will be a better person than you've ever been before. I believe that.